Awesome. Thank you. So Arnaud, I was going to do a quick intro, but Andy did that for us. So I think, how about I just start hitting you up with the hard question, right? And to give a little background, and Arnaud, I'll throw to you as well. I oversee the live event portfolio, a live event and experience portfolio at ViacomCBS. So what does that mean? Anything that's all about being on the ground, creating consumer interaction, earned media, and just experience that people want to share in those shared moments. So needless to say, 2021 has been an interesting year. Arnaud, anything that you'd like to add to that?
Yes, 2020, not 21. 2020
Oh, yes.
was interesting. We're not out of 2020 yet. Yeah, it's been an extreme year in many ways. So we basically, our business just disappeared, right? We're a marketplace where people can buy tickets for live events, and when there are no live events, there is nothing much to do. So we went down to a couple of percentage points of our previous year business, so basically nothing. And we had to just readjust the whole business, reorganize the team, cut down marketing as much as possible, cut down costs everywhere to make sure that we could weather the crisis. And I don't think we're out of the crisis. I think 2021 is going to be disrupted in many ways, but at least things are moving forward.
That's good to hear. Things are moving forward. So let me ask you, right? I agree with you 100%. As we get into 2021 and even beyond, there's so much uncertainty, and with that uncertainty, how do you plan for that? What are you doing to try and plan and cope for that? And then also, do you see any opportunity as you go into that planning as well? And what would that be?
So we've done some surveys of our customer base, our fans, right? And what's interesting is obviously you have a range of behaviors. You have people that are extremely anxious to go back to live events. They are missing the early live events. There's a lot of pent-up demand out there, and they would go to anything. They would literally any music, any sports event, they are missing so much the crowds and the electric atmosphere of being there, right? And on the other side, you have people that they are, for personal reasons, they have a family member that's in a high risk category. They know people that have been directly impacted by COVID. They are much more risk averse, and they are not going to go anytime soon to a crowd and an event like that. What's interesting though is it's not. I mean, obviously, if you're young, if you're in some states, all of these elements play a role. But overall, you cannot just put people in a bucket, right? You have every type of behavior, and personal reasons are playing a role. So we have to be careful when we communicate. You cannot just assume because you are young and in Florida that you're going to be excited to go to a live event, and vice versa. Because you are older in California, you're going to be reluctant to go. So we have to be conscious of all the types of perspectives when we do communications, and especially when we reach out to customers, because some people may see us speaking about a live event as kind of pressing them to go to a place where it's risky.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, so how do you go about communicating to the different sort of segments of the audience or your user base? Because it is a delicate situation, right? We had talked about this last week, where there are definitely different segments who are like, all right, let's go do this. And then you have the families or the folks who are at high risk who aren't. And you're a national platform, but you also speak very regionally to folks. So I have to imagine that creates some challenges.
Yeah, it does. So the first thing we did is we stopped all reach outs because so many events were being canceled. I mean, it's hard to imagine and to remember 7 months ago, but every week we had first events were being postponed and rescheduled, and then they were in that void. And finally, most events were just canceled or postponed to 2021, sometimes 2022. So for the first couple of months, we basically stopped doing reach out and marketing, even emails, because we didn't want to push people to buy even tickets for that were likely to be canceled or rescheduled. Once the situation cleared up a little bit, starting in July, August, we started doing emails and marketing around events that were virtual. And there were a lot of live streams in the music side or theater. There were a lot of online events happening. MLB was replaying old games.
Yep.
Just to have a wait and see kind of approach. Now we're in a place where some genres, some sports have events with fans. NFL, college football are good examples. Rodeo, NASCAR are other ones. And I think we can then target people that are interested in these. And we know that the event will happen. We know that they have put in place all the measures to make it a safe event, right?
Yep.
They have social distancing in place. They have extreme cleaning measures. You have to have a mask. So with all these measures in place, which we communicate to people before they buy a ticket, we feel like this is a safe place. And I'm happy to say that there is no event, at least not recently, that have created any, that has been a super spreader event. So it means that when they are doing it, they can do that in safe conditions. And so we are now targeting people around these events because the event is going to happen, and it's a safe place to be.
That's fantastic, right? I think the role a brand has in communicating with consumers, especially that level of trust, is really, really important. And it's really great to hear the level of sort of just how meticulous you are in terms of how you are messaging that and being aware just of who may be open and who's not, because it's very, very important. You know, you had mentioned something a little while ago, and it was about sort of the onslaught of hybrid events and digital events. Curious, is StubHub doing anything to help fans who don't want to engage in real life to connect those dots? And then just from your perspective as a marketer, what are you seeing out there that you think is really breaking through and working?
Yeah, definitely. I think every crisis is an opportunity, right? And when faced, especially for the live event industry, faced with such a big disrupting crisis, we're seeing innovation pop up left and right. And I mean, you've seen the drive-in concerts. There was a band that did bubbles where everybody was in their individual bubble, plastic bubble. So I think these are interesting innovation. The one I'm very excited about is really a virtual live event. So we all know about live streams. There have been hundreds of live streams happening. But live stream is, to me, more akin to TV. It's a one-way communication. You're watching something. It can be a great show. Billie Eilish on Saturday did a really great live stream, but it's still a one-way thing. And I think we're missing, as a fan, you're missing the interaction. You're missing the participation of the event. What's really exciting when you go to an event is you get to be part of the event. You interact with the crowd, interacts with the artists or the teams. So I believe that with modern technology, you can actually do that. You can have the artists interact with the audience, even though they are virtually there. You can have the people be part of the event, and they can be featured in the event. They can, you can think of like voting for the next song. You can think of asking questions. You can think of answering questions, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's one thing we're working on. To really help the fans connect with the artists and the bands, and the artists make some money, because since I mean, if you look at artists today, a lot of their income and revenue is coming from live events. It's harder to make money from selling music. And at the end of the day, if they cannot do live events, they cannot sell merchandising, they cannot connect with their fans, they cannot get new fans. And I think we have a role to play there to help them.
I agree. And, you know, you said several really interesting things, and one of the things I want to call out is it's sort of like this idea of connectivity, right? Like a live stream is a live stream is a live stream, and I love the fact that you're calling out that this has to be more than that. And I think it's very important because you want to create community, you want to make people feel like they're connected to something and having a fun time. Are there things that you're doing as part of your strategy to ensure that you are connecting those dots so that there is community and interactivity? Because, right, like it feels so low-hanging fruit, but it isn't always happening out there.
No, that's true. So I think one band that is doing it really well is BTS. They actually did an event with 100 million people, which seems mind-boggling when you think of it. And all of these fans, I mean, BTS is well known for really being engaging and having a really broad fan base. They were all able to interact. In their case, they were able to submit short videos, and these videos were then displayed in the concert in the background. And so that's one of the things we're looking at, right? You can create a fan wall if you want. In the same way that when you're in a stadium, you have a camera showing the audience and people are jumping around when they're on the big screen, you can do something similar online. I think in a small setting, you can create a VIP, maybe a pre and or post show, a VIP package that enable people to ask questions directly to the artist and create that real proximity that would be harder to have in the real world. And there would be new things that still have to be discovered and tested. And it may depend also on what the artist wants to do, because they are not all the same.
Totally. I agree with you that. And the other thing you said is one of my favorite phrases, but it's this notion of exclusivity. Suddenly going into this hybrid model, this idea of new exclusivity or access or streamlining access to talent becomes much easier to do. And it incentivizes, right? Like everybody now gets to be a VIP. As a marketer, how does that make people feel? It makes them feel great, right?
Well, also because we should always remember. I mean, it's definitely a great experience to go to a live event, right? To go to a stadium in a concert venue. But at the end of the day, not everybody can come. There are usually a limited number of spaces and tickets. It can be very expensive. If you take your whole family to see a concert for a prominent artist, you very quickly go in the thousands of dollars. And unless you are able to start to pick these front row tickets, you have an average experience at the end of the day in terms of access and visibility and being close to the artist. And I think I really believe that the future of concerts, very similar to what's happening in sports, by the way, is you're going to see these hybrid events. People will still be able to go there in person, but people who cannot go because they are far or they were not able to get tickets or they don't have the means will still be able to benefit and join the event in a virtual fashion.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, you also said something else that I think is really interesting. I'd love to go into this a little bit more, but everybody thinks of StubHub as a consumer-facing product, right? Like I go there, I purchase tickets, I go to a show, and it's great. But you had alluded to the fact that you're starting to work with artists as well. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think, again, the crisis is going to reset the rules a little bit, right? So before, you had the promoters, you had the managers, you had the artists, and kind of everybody had their place in their space. I think, I mean, maybe taking a quick detour, I believe 2021 is still going to be very disrupted. You will see some sports, as we're starting to see, NFL and college football are good examples, but because they are outside. But so you will see some sports with limited capacity, and maybe in some states where rules are a bit more lax, you will see higher attendance. But that's going to still be a fraction of what it used to be, and limited to sports. I think it's very difficult for a venue to have a concert with only 25% of seats, right? It just doesn't make sense from an economic perspective. And as a result, if you add to that a virtual element, you can actually make it work financially for the band and for the fans and for the venue. So yes, I think this is going to change the way it's organized, because there will be a need to have the virtual platform. There will be a need to reach out to these fans and sell them something that's a bit different. And in that world, we feel like StubHub, we have a good brand. We have access to millions of fans. We are a destination for fans to find tickets for live events.
Yep.
And so yes, we are starting more and more to look at the artists, the venues, and all these actors, and help them be successful in that new world.
That's fantastic. From your perspective, in terms of like these hybrid events, I agree with you. They're going to be here for the long run, right? Like, because there's this added benefit. You could be across the country and still participate in something potentially. So everybody still gets a sense of community. But as we're seeing right now, what do you think that secret sauce is, though, for that special live? Like, how does this virtual event work? Why do people want to spend time, commit, not watch Netflix or their favorite TV show, or go do something with their family? Like, how do these events still stand out so they still drive culture and conversation?
Yeah, it's fair, right? Like, live events, even before the pandemic, they were competing with Netflix and just staying at home and watching TV. So this is not going to be different. I think what it provides you with a different approach, right? You can watch your favorite artist with your friends at home. You can have a big screen, and very similar to what happens in sports. Right? How many people actually go to a venue, and how many people just have a party at home? So I think you could create a similar concept, and from your home, you can have a front row experience. You can see the artist, you can maybe pick your camera angle, you can buy a more expensive package and get to ask questions after the show or before the show. You can also really create that exclusive experience by interacting and maybe voting for the next act or the next song. So I see this happening, especially for maybe the torso tail artists, right? I mean, the top artists, they are all set. They already have the ways to do things. But I'm thinking of all the up and coming artists that it's just much harder for them to do a tour because it's harder to get the venue to be full. It's harder to have fans all across the US, and they may not have the critical mass. But if you go virtual, now it's much easier. You can have a couple of dates or a couple of times, and you can cover the US or the world. You don't need a minimum critical mass to have an event. You can use that to showcase your album, and you can use that to connect to your fans or get new fans in a much more lightweight approach.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. And, you also said something else, there's been a lot of disruption in the marketplace. And I think what's really, really interesting is there was a tried and true model that was out there. You went on the road, promoters, venues, you bought tickets the traditional way, and that's how it worked. And what it looks like right now is it's almost as if music experience specifically, but it goes to other things, have almost become a direct-to-consumer sort of opportunity in this marketplace. And it's interesting, right? Because now the role of promoter are brands that typically would partner with me or come to you to figure out how to do something. And to see them dip and manage it now, it's creating a lot of disruption. Like, I'm curious, like, what's your forecast on that? Like, do you think it's going to continue that way? Do you think that's going to change? Do you think we all live in harmony? Because, right, like it's easy to focus attention on this now, but is it a year from now?
It is. So again, as I said, I think next year it's going to be very disrupted. And who knows, it could be longer, by the way, right? But we hear recently about COVID it's here to stay. It's not going to magically disappear even after a vaccine. So I think we have to just get ready for COVID to stay with us, to be like the flu and be something obviously less disruptive because we will know how to manage it.
Yeah.
I think there were trends. When you have a crisis like this, it's an accelerator of trends, right? It's disrupting first, but then it just accelerates trends. So if you think of telehealth, if you think of online e-commerce, online shopping for groceries, all of these trends were obviously there, and they are just accelerated with a crisis like that. I think in the live event industry, it's very similar. You had times before that were concerning, like the price of tickets kept increasing every year. I don't think everyone can spend hundreds of dollars to go to a concert, right? It's just at some point you start making it too expensive, and I feel like this is going to give an opportunity to change the model and the approach, and give the opportunity for people to enjoy live events, connect with the artists and the bands they love, without being such a high cost for them.
No, I agree with what you're saying. The innovation has been really interesting. Obviously, just how the marketplace has become saturated. I think one of the things that I've noticed, and I'm curious what your take is on this, is sort of the notion of virtual hybrid almost, right? Like suddenly talent, you're used to, on the onset of this, everybody got in front of a couch, played a guitar, did something along those lines. But as we've sort of powered through this, you've started to see a much more sort of diversified sort of approach with talent, where they're mixing cocktails, they're doing stand-up. Are you seeing that as well? And is StubHub also getting involved in that sort of aspect of where the hybrid is going?
Yeah, so I definitely agree that I think hybrid is going to happen more and more as the country reopens. You have places in the country where you can have fans. It's just a very few number. And I think that really speaks to the usefulness of an hybrid approach.
Yeah.
Because if you can only have, again, 10, 20% of the venue filled, it's not enough to make it worthwhile. But now if you can add unlimited number of people online and give them a good experience, that changes the approach. So I don't know how it's going to be in the long term. For sure, I think once things there will be it will go back towards more what it used to be, but I think some of it will stay behind. And I believe that you will have. What's interesting is the virtual aspect brings a lot of value.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going back to Billie Eilish, which was just this Saturday, so it's fresh in my mind. It was right. It made massive use of the virtual background, green screen, basically, and it was like you were like in a video clip of the whole show, and different. It was something that. In many ways, venues were trying to emulate.
Yeah.
I went to multiple concerts before COVID, feels like ages ago, at the Trade Center here in the Bay Area, in San Francisco. And the screens behind the artists were taking precedent. Like you end up, in many cases, just watching the screen because that's so big and so much in your face. If you go to a game, a football game, again, pre-COVID, you end up watching the screen a lot because this is where you can see details of the action, right? So I think the reality is you can emulate what it was already happening, but people were in the venue because there was no other way. I think I believe that we will see the opportunity to do that remotely.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you. I think of all of the hybrid events that have been happening, a handful have been able to make a lot of really great noise. Just the earned buzz that has come across with the Billie Eilish performance, like so many people are talking about it. She hit the home run, right? Like she did it really, really well. She's found a way to get partners involved. And that's where that model's going to go until like in real life it can come together again. So let me ask you this. We've been talking a lot about where the events have gone and how it's been hybrid. Is there anything else in sort of the realm of what like StubHub is doing that you can sort of talk about, just how there's some innovation that you're looking to roll out to continue to engage consumers as we transition through this hybrid world and into this back to normal sort of world?
I mean, yes, we've done a few things that are a bit more basic, if you want, like hygiene. So all the venues that have fans right now, they have pods, right? So if you go to a football game, you're buying a a batch of 4 tickets. These tickets, you cannot split them because they want to keep the pod integrity. So we had to update our systems. So as a buyer and as a seller, you cannot sell them in chunks. Before, obviously, you could buy 4 tickets and sell them in ones and twos. And this is not a possibility anymore because you want to keep the pod integrity there. And this is a requirement from the NFL. So small things, but important. Another big one was, how do you convey all the criterias and the conditions that are around that game? Because you want the fan, before he or she buys, to know what to expect, to know, hey, what happens if, is there a temperature check at the entrance? And what happens if I have too high of a temperature, right? I have to wear a mask. How do they clean the venue to make sure it's safe, et cetera, et cetera. So we had to bring all of that information front and center so the fan would be informed early on, which for many people would be something they wanted to be buying confidently, and also to inform people about what to expect at the venue.
Nice. And do you see that starting to be rolled out and just be standardized across industry? Because we do a lot internally just talking about like what this new normal is going to look like, and how safety, which probably was an afterthought, is now going to be added. Well, not an afterthought, but the notion of like temperature checks, washing your hands, having to go into your pocket as few times as possible, probably going to be a much higher priority or consideration set for folks who just consider what they're going to do next. Like, do you see the industry as a whole sort of going towards that, or just a handful of really smart folks saying this is what we got to do to make people feel comfortable?
No, I think, again, because it's going to disrupt the live event business for a while, I think it's going to be across. I don't think a venue can have an event without having measures in place. I mean, speaking of trends that are getting accelerated, right? Digital ticketing. I think basically this is the death of the physical ticket. So everything is going to go to mobile ticketing or digital ticketing. I think we're going to have a generalization of specific time to arrive at an event. So you don't have huge queues, and you have to go to a certain gate and be between a certain time frame to be able to access the event, or you may be delayed or put on the side. So I think these things will become the norm, and they will just be imposed by the authorities for safety measures, but also by the public, who would want to have confidence that this is a safe place.
No, agreed. I think those are all really, really great points, and I do agree with you. I love the notion of having to get in line to get into a festival or venue, so you don't have any traffic. That would make life so much easier, and to be able to get all of my friends and coworkers actually to get to the place when they're supposed to. So I hope that happens sooner rather than later, right? That's my wish, not maybe everybody's too, but that's really interesting. So let me ask you this. We keep going about disruption and uncertainty. As you navigate all of this, what are some of the lessons that you're sort of taking note of, or things that you've thrown up against the wall that you think you're going to continue to move with your business as you move forward?
Yeah, I mean, this was a black swan event, right? Nobody was predicting it, or I mean, I guess you could have, but it's the type of things you can have to predict. For us, it hurt us pretty bad because so if you think back, end of March, all the events are canceled, so we don't have any new sales. But then all the events are canceled, meaning we have to refund tickets. And at that point, we already had paid sellers because we're a marketplace, and we had instituted a policy a few years ago to benefit the seller, to pay them before the event, so they would have access to the cash earlier. And that made us be in a very strange situation from a cash perspective. So I think for me, it's really, you need to think of what could happen in any cases, and may not be ready for it, but at least have scenarios planning. You know what to do in that case. It was definitely a big surprise, and it took us some time to adjust. I think it's we're not out of it yet. So
Yeah,
the reality is we still have to get behind, get like really address this crisis before we can draw all the lessons from it.
yeah,
But to me, it's again, I said it earlier. I think every crisis it creates opportunities, and I'm pushing my team to really look at how you can benefit from it. Right, the first couple of months, it's all about recovery, making sure
yeah,
you can survive the crisis, making sure you adjust your processes and your business. Now it's more about, okay, this is the new normal. It's not going to get back to normal. Actually, it will be disrupted for another year, maybe more,
yeah.
let's say a year. But how do you adjust? How do you leverage it? It creates opportunities for us, right? In the virtual live events, for instance, or other things. How do you make it so you can come up on top at the end of it?
Yeah, agreed. I mean, and I do feel for you, and because your product, in addition to events stopping, your marketplace just stopped, which makes it really, really difficult. And one of the things that I'm really impressed about with you is, and it's based off of how we spoke when we spoke on Friday, and just some other things that I've heard you say. It's always been about like the consumer and keeping the customer first. Like I have to imagine that's an incredible challenge when you don't necessarily have product to give, but you still want to be a customer first or a customer centric business. Like, I agree with that notion. Like, I'm just curious, like the overall response with that, like, what was that? Okay, here's how we're going to handle this.
Yeah, that was the hardest thing, to be honest, is we at StubHub, we are proud to be fan first and to think from a customer perspective first. And for 20 years now, we've always think like that,
Yeah.
putting the fan at the center of, and for instance, when if you arrive at the event and there's any issue with the tickets, we'll buy a ticket at the whatever price to make sure you can get in, right? And this was not about one. This is what about promise we made to you that you would get into the event. So unfortunately, this time around, the event was so big and so impactful that we had to pare down some of our policies. The refund policy, for instance, we had to change, and we're giving you a credit as a default. Just we're put in a position where if we had to refund every ticket, we would not be able to because of what we pay to the sellers.
Yeah. But, and you brought this up when we spoke on Friday. I'm going out on a limb when I say this, but I would imagine people, as long as the time frame was reasonable, right? Even though it's undefined, I feel like people responded positively to that. I mean, I think there was a survey that came out recently that said ticket purchase intent is still up at an all-time high. People, rather than get refunds, want to hold on to their tickets because they still want to go to those events. Is there anything you could add to that?
Yes, for sure. I think Ticketmaster did a survey where they showed, or they shared they shared publicly that 86% of ticket owners kept their tickets when an event was rescheduled. So there is definitely most people, if they can afford it, they want to keep their tickets because they still want to go to the event. There is a massive pent-up demand. I mean, everyone I'm talking to, they just say, hey, I can't wait for events to be back. And yes, they want to be safe. It's not about being crazy, but there is that gap. That's the big thing which is missing from their lives. And we are social animals, and we want to be with our friends, with the crowd, and all together. So you're right. There is. I don't think everyone was clamoring for a refund. It's just that in a perfect world, I would have loved for us to be able to keep everything the same. We had to adjust. I can't wait for the time where we can adjust back and go back to very customer first policies, which hopefully will be soon. Now that the crisis has been basically managed.
No, agree. And let me add to that, because I think what's interesting about sort of the product that you offer, we offer, is we're in the business of like shared experiences and making memories, right? Like when we compete for your time in real life, we have your undivided attention for that single day or those 3 days. But beyond that scope, folks are also engaged with us thinking about okay, what outfit do I want to wear? Who's all coming with me? It's much more than like the single day or the 3 days. So I think it creates a much more unique opportunity for us, right? In terms of having people being a little bit more empathetic to what's going on here. So yeah. So I'm getting told we should go to group questions. How do you feel about that? Hopefully they're easier than what I was throwing at you. So, so let's take a look. What innovations and technologies, oh, I got to pull this up, so bear with me, technology. What do you see as the biggest future challenge to retail and e-commerce and the biggest opportunity?
So that's a pretty wide question. I mean, yeah, it's pretty wide. I think, I mean, as I said, right, I think we are going towards more and more digitalization of the world. Yep. Everything can be bought online now. This crisis has accelerated that dramatically. You can literally stay home and live from e-commerce purchases. So I think that trend is here to stay. I think retail is it's going to be difficult for physical retail to find a space. So I don't see that trend reverting anytime soon. The opportunity, it's right there, right? It's just the ability to efficiently buy anything from anywhere and get it within a couple of days to your place.
I agree with that. I mean, the shopifying and gamifying of being able to pick up artist merch and all of that suddenly becomes a lot more easier and more accessible, and it's right there. Here's another good one for you. So many brands have drastically reduced media budgets over the past few months. How is your media plan adjusted? If your budget has been reduced, have you gotten more creative and efficient with your strategies? So, yeah.
Yes. So our case was really black and white. We didn't have anything to sell. So for the first, I mean, basically since mid-March until I would say September, we basically did nothing. We cut everything because there was nothing to sell, and there's no point. We had a brand campaign and we canceled everything. It just made no sense to spend money at a time where there was no event happening.
Yeah.
I think now we're seeing events will start, especially in the sports and some genres there. It's still very diffuse and limited. So we are going more after performance marketing, SEM on Google, typically affiliates. We obviously use our own channels like CRM, email, push notifications. We do a little bit of comms, PR, social media, but we have not reactivated all the other paid channels, Facebook, brand, display. And the reason is we have to be thoughtful when we reactivate these, because if you're on Google, we're targeting a certain game, right? Tickets for the next game with the Giants. This is easy because we know you're looking for that, right? So we know you're in the mood of that bucket of people that are looking to get a ticket. Now, if I'm doing an ad on Facebook or anywhere else, I don't know for sure that you are in that group of people that are eager to go back to a game. And some people may see that ad and feel like this is a betrayal, right? I mean, it's perceptions and feelings can be pretty high around the COVID crisis, especially, and it's true, right? If you lost someone or if you're at risk, me telling you should go to a game could really land really badly. So for now, we're very cautious there. And also, simply put, the number of events is still pretty small, so it doesn't make sense to be broad.
Totally. So let me ask you this: as leaders, you're always developing your abilities. What skills would you like your marketing teams to develop this year?
So we had to do a pretty big transformation in the team. First, we reduced the team, so people had to do more things, and secondly, we have to be more scrappy because we cut a lot of budgets. So I think scrappiness would be one. And instead of before you had a huge business to deal with, so spending $100,000 was not a big thing. Now we have a small business, and it will restart. I mean, I'm very sure of that. But until it does, and until it's back up, we have to be scrappy and very considerate on how we invest, how we spend our time, where we do it.
Totally. And, one of the other things that I think is worth noting as well, from my perspective, right, my team is going out there selling live events. There are no live events, but their job is to drive monetization across this portfolio that we're optimistically is saying happening. So I think what we did is we took a step back and we were like, okay, guys, you have to be a little bit more empathetic as you're going out talking to our partners, and we have to hear what they need and what they want and how we can assist them through this crisis as well, right? Like, because a lot of folks, those marketing budgets went towards keeping the lights on so they didn't have to furlough or lay people off. So for us, we've been much more about, hey, how do we go out there? How do we actually become additive to what you're trying to do and just sort of be a resource rather than sort of, hey, give us what money you have, what money you have. We want to be a true friend, partner, and ally. Like, it's all about the long term rather than the short term from our perspective. And then also, I think, because I don't think anybody thought about this, the ability to connect by way of Zoom or any of these tools, so much more difficult since you don't have that in person. So like the ability to be able to have meaningful conversation, and right, it goes down to what you were saying before, connection and community, and being able to make that all sort of come together.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and then I guess there's one more question. What innovations and technologies are you utilizing to execute your strategies? Has that changed since the pandemic has begun?
Yeah, I mean, it has changed. We had to cut a lot of things we're using because it made no sense to use them in a much smaller business. Mm-hmm. And then we had to reduce the team, unfortunately. So it means that we had less people, and so we didn't have any people to do some things. So today I don't think we have adopted new tools. I think it's more like we have reduced the number of tools we're using to focus on the most important ones. Mm-hmm. And once things restart and the business grows again, we'll reopen and restart the other tools we're using before.
Great. That's fantastic. And then, I think I just saw one more question come by. So the influencer space has seemingly become immensely crowded and packed with noise. What challenges does this present, and how do you foresee micro-influencers being more heavily incorporated into the future?
So I would say that, I mean, again, speaking of our world, mm-hmm. I'm ready to bet that influencers are struggling right now because a lot of their income was coming from advertisers that are not willing to pay anymore because there's not a lot of business happening. So I think once things restart, it would be a good time to go and start talking with influencers because they will be looking for ways to get income and revenue from sponsors and brands.
Agreed. Annie, how are you?
Hi, doing great. That was awesome, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Great conversation. I really hope that you get to come back and talk to us some more.
Yes.
So thank you, Arnaud and Adam, for joining us, and all of our wonderful speakers today, and our lovely audience members. Thank you for your incredible